Okay, welcome everyone. We'll let you get settled in. We'll get started in just a moment. While you're settling in, just tell us a little bit about yourselves in the chat, where you are and what you do. If you are operating a small business, how big is it? If you're operating a law firm or practice area, or what type of business are you in? So share a little bit with us in the chat and we'll get started in just a moment.
On my screen share, Maddie, right now, are you seeing the webinar chat over my deck, or are you still seeing just the deck?
No, I see the deck. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So I'm going to keep the chat open too. I can see folks and
Perfect.
not bothering them.
Yeah, awesome. Chase. Great. Yeah, right. Awesome. Thank you for confirming. Okay, so let's get started. And keep sharing all your info in the chat. That's super helpful for us. We can tailor the presentation to you. Um, Okay, everyone, welcome to another Smith AI Master Series webinar. I'm Maddie Martin. I'm the Senior Vice President of Growth. And today I have Nalini Prasad, a longtime friend, who is going to be presenting on the future of digital marketing, ChatGPT, Gemini, and AI overviews. There's a lot in this presentation. She's going to be going over marketing strategies relevant to search, paid strategies, you name it. So Nalini is an expert. She has been the chief strategy officer at BluShark Digital, marketing agency for lawyers for a long time now. And her expertise is something that, I have prized for a long time. And I'm really excited to bring her to you today through this webinar series. So Nalini, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I know that we have known each other personally for a bit of time here, and then it's been wonderful to see all that Smith AI has come out with and how BluShark has grown as well along the way. Thank you so much for asking the folks in the audience today to give me some more information. I really like to keep these very personal. I want you to take away something from this presentation that makes sense for your firm. So as I go through this, we're going to talk about everything Maddie said there, from, what are big firms, small firms, medium firms doing, what works digitally still, what's worked through the test of time, and what's coming up, what's new, right? But if you have questions, please throw those into the chat. Maddie will stop me, interrupt, so that we can get your questions answered in real time. So the first thing that I think through the test of time that has always been extremely important to every firm, and that firms don't necessarily always have in order, is tracking, right? So if you're going to spend any amount of money on marketing, whether it is your advertising budget offline, online, referral, there's many different buckets of marketing. You have to be able to have a very real conversation at the end of that campaign and say, here's what it did for me. Here's how many cases I actually got to sign. Here is, what, maybe I didn't get quality, but I did get leads. A lot of different moving pieces that you want to be able to track. So for those of you in the audience wondering how many of you actually do that, if you want to just say yes, or put your hand up or whatever it is, but really trying to figure out how people are doing this. There's many different ways. You can do it in a CRM. You can use something like HubSpot, which is not legal specific, or you can use something that is legal specific, like Lead Docket, right? Your case management system, all of those different types of things. But these are just a couple of the items that I think in particular are very important sources and ways to set up that tracking. So most importantly, if you have something like CallRail, right, which is a service that will tell you exactly where on your website someone originated, or it'll tell you if you have multiple locations, you may have a downtown office and then you have a suburban office, it'll actually tell you, did that call and now case signed come from your suburban office or your downtown office, right? When you're creating marketing budgets, a lot of times you're creating that budget determining where are you spending that money for which office is thriving, which office is doing well, which office has room to grow. So if you have a call rail system or something like it called tracking metrics, you will want to integrate this into your reporting, into your case management system, so that you have that original source. Okay, this call came from this particular office location, but what happened to that call? In your case management system or your intake system, you have, is that a wanted lead? Is that a chase right now? Did we end up signing it, right? And when you put those two together, you are able to actually get a cost per case signed, right? Because you have, here's my leads, here's where they came from, and then here's how many actually signed. You can also look at the ones that were quality, that were wanted, that you didn't sign, and have a better understanding overall, where are my best cases coming from, right? So on here, you can see the referral source. You can get very specific, like I said, by each individual office. You could do it by campaign, by any little bit of measurement. I always say, though, don't get crazy. Let's not try to over analyze data, but every single bucket that you spend money in should be tracked in this kind of way. In certain programs and dashboards in your case management system, most case management systems that are built for legal, there is absolutely a screen in there where you can actually see all of your wanted leads, your signed leads, and you can see them in real time. So you can change and just see this month, what did I get? This quarter, how did I do, right? And you can also add into these types of screens your source. So you're able to see, well, what source did that come in? A lot of times these trackings are going to help you also manage your business. So whether you're a law firm or in any kind of industry, you're trying to see how your team is doing, right? For the law firms out there, a lot of these tracking mechanisms have ways to see by attorney who is getting the best verdicts and settlements, right? Who's crushing it out there in the litigation piece. And then you can also check on other pieces like that within your company to have these as little data pieces when you're looking at any kind of thing, right? Because a lot of times you may say, oh, well, this lawyer's telling me that the marketing's really good, and this lawyer's telling me it's terrible, especially if you're doing multiple practice areas. And I find that if you can track your information here, you're likely to see, okay, well, they're getting the better quality cases, right? They're getting the cases that are coming from this bucket and maybe not this bucket. And so there's different elements here. There's different moving pieces that we have to look at. A lot of this may seem overwhelming if you don't have a case management system or you don't have a tracking system that's automated, then yes, if you're doing this on spreadsheets, it's really hard. There's also a lot of pieces I've mentioned. There is your call reel tracking, then there is your lead docket, right? Your CRM, then there is the case management system. You don't need all three, but having all three is the difference between being good and being great, right? You can be good and you can track things individually. You can take a lot of time and have to put those things together manually. But if you have all of these pieces and they all talk to each other, this kind of brings us into that technical world, then you are going to have the most precise data that is needed at your fingertips. You don't need a human to sit there and go through spreadsheets and connect with your intake team and then your marketing team talks to them, right? If you can streamline this process, you can make very informed marketing decisions very quickly. So I think everything begins here. And I do think that the people that might be on this call right now are firms that have done the basics, right? You guys have been doing this for a while. You know what has worked, what hasn't worked, but do you know to this level? Do you know to this data point, right? And so again, I kind of use that going from good to great. Good firms can make those decisions that, yes, this has worked, I'm going to continue doing it. Great firms will say, I've got to move this little tiny bit from this campaign over to this campaign because I know that I'm getting more from this campaign, right? And they can almost get it down to exactly how much money needs to be moved from one bucket to the next. And then they can also have those predictions and those numbers saying, if I want to grow this much in revenue next year, here's what needs to happen, right? It's almost like reverse engineering your revenue and figuring out where does it start from. If I invest more here, will I continue to just grow a little bit every year, or can I grow exponentially, right? And don't just throw spaghetti at the wall and say, oh, well, I know this has worked, so I'm going to double down on this bucket, because you may find that you don't double your revenue and then you're upset, right? So all of these things, very important. Some of these dashboards also show you really cool things with trends, which I think is something that should be considered when you're thinking about your marketing. The end of the year is always quiet, right? For everybody across the board. November and December, holiday seasons, we see a downtick in call volume year over year, right? Sometimes in the summer you see that as well, But I think it's important because a lot of people don't think about this, but maybe when you want to make massive changes, or you know that you're gonna maybe bring down the budget for paid ads or something like that, you want to do them at the times of the year that are going to be slow anyways, right? Or completely opposite, you know that November and December get slow. So now we have to amp up our marketing. If we're doing paid ads, we need to outspend our competitors so that for the very few people, for the smaller volume that's looking right now and has cases, that I am being seen. So looking at those trends, keeping in mind year over year information, and being strategic about how you're spending your money through the year is also something that is kind of at that great level, right? You're thinking about good, you're just doing these things, but then when you start to get that granular in how you're planning out your marketing, you're leveraging that data and you're really looking at your firm holistically. So this is the last piece of the tracking, is make sure that every bucket is being tracked, as I mentioned before. If you don't have a system, then a spreadsheet, a manual piece of this that you might have someone looking at, the things you want are every single marketing bucket you spend in. And so you can see examples of that, right? Where it could be certain find law ads, and it could be TV, OTT, it can be billboards, right? It can be digital. All of these are different opportunities out there. Make sure they're each different line items. You need to know exactly how much you're spending, and that amount needs to be right. You want to add in all the fees too, not just the spend on the campaign, but the fees you're paying the companies. And then you really do need that tracking to understand how many leads came from each of those buckets. And then that's where that next step comes in, where if you can see how many actually signed, you get that cost per lead, you get that cost per case signed. So biggest KPI you should be looking at. Now, there's a ton of shiny objects out there. We talked about all these different marketing buckets. It is getting increasingly difficult to vet everything out there. You've got a new marketing company popping up every day. You've got a new AI company popping up every day. Someone that's telling you, hey, I can do the client journey and your clients will love you. And so all of a sudden they'll be great advocates, and then you'll get all these referrals. There's lead generation, all of these things. A lot of them work. It's just so hard right now with all the industry noise, right? And I hear it, I feel for all of the firms that have to wade through that. Part of presentations that I do sometimes is to say, here are my favorite different tools, right? I've heard from our near 400 clients that these are ones they've vetted, they've used, they've really liked, these are ones they've struggled with, and I can give that honest answer to people, right? When they're asking me for that advice. So I'm always happy to be that kind of resource. In this particular situation today, I wanted to not focus on the shiny objects, but focus on what actually works, right? What has worked, what is continuing to work, right? Before we get into what is the future. But I think we also learn about the future by understanding the past. History repeats itself. I have seen it for close to 20 years in Google alone, right? As it does these algorithm updates, you know what's coming next. It doesn't always tell you what's coming next, but it's been a formula essentially, right? And now as we get into ChatGPT, we're seeing a lot of the same thing. And so we'll kind of talk about that in a minute. But in terms of what are those buckets of marketing or pieces of marketing that we can still depend on? One of those would be backlinks. So in the past, and there's been many different ways that we have been told, get your name mentioned on other websites, right? Get yourself published, or if you're speaking at an event or you donate money to a good cause, you're involved in the community, make sure those websites, make sure the press is talking about you. And it used to be that you had to have your website mentioned, and I actually have a link there so that the Googlebot could crawl it and say, oh, this firm has their website mentioned on at least 25 different websites or 40 websites, right? And that would be great because it meant your firm was really out there, was an actual authority. What we saw in the last couple of years is that even if it wasn't your website, but it was just your brand name, just your lawyer's name, that's associated with your website was mentioned in these articles in the press, that Google started to pick up on that. Google got smarter and was able to just see those mentions, right? Something you see here pictured is a new part of page one near the map pack, near the very top of Google page one, that's called most mentioned places. It doesn't pop up with every search, but when you're looking for very specific things, it often does. You'll notice that it has your rating, your Google Business Profile rating, and the number of reviews, right? This most mentioned places, our only understanding of this is basically being talked about in citation sites, in directory listings, on press, right? As we've moved forward, it's not just helping you with ranking, but there are things like this, a most mentioned places carousel. In ChatGPT, it's looking for when you're mentioned on certain forums, when you're mentioned in certain places around the internet, right? So the more that you can get your brand out there online, the better. And this is historically, if you had done that and you had a bunch of backlinks, you've been building up yourself for 10 years, you're on all these different websites, that is only making you stronger right now when people are just starting that journey, right? So all the backlinks you've invested in, all that time your company has spent is absolutely still worth it. And it is a platform that is going to be used in the future. Number one. Number two, local is not going anywhere. Local is very much here to stay. When you're searching those long tail questions, so you're asking a long question or you're asking for generic information, Google, Gemini now, the AI overview that it gives you information from multiple sites is there for you. It's there to give you information, right? And answer your questions. But when you're actively looking for a service, and you say, I need a nail salon, or what's the best Italian restaurant in the city that I'm visiting, right? It is always going to give you the options of the actual business that's closest to you as a good user experience, right? This 3-pack that you see here is connected to your Google Business Profile. So hopefully all of you on here have your Google Business Profile, have access to it, understand that filling in those fields is the most important thing. But what I want to say here is that I've seen through time that Google's constantly worked on finding the best 3 options, on fine-tuning those little geographies and how it defines near me to give more people a bite at the apple. And then with AI overviews, the brand new page one that we saw, even the AI overviews have a local 3-pack. As of a week ago, or just very recently, maybe a couple days ago, ChatGPT announced Atlas, which is, maybe you guys have heard about it. I don't know if many of you have downloaded it, but it's basically a browser now, so you don't have to go to chatgpt.com, but it's like opening up Chrome or opening up Safari. You open up Atlas and it is ChatGPT. It has a local 3-pack that shows much more often than ChatGPT did. So again, tested time, they constantly work on it. It is still there in the future, and it is something to absolutely pat yourself on the back if you did it, because the more that you have there, the greater your foundation is for the future. If you haven't, it's something to still invest in. This is an example really quickly of also showing you how it is in the AI version of Google, the Gemini, that you still see that 3-pack there. So it's pulling, it's very relevant. Now, the other thing that has been working, as we mentioned, is local, right? So how do you make sure that you're making the most of the local SEO? I don't know how many of you have more than one office location, but whether you have more than one or not, you always have your backyard, your main office location, your home base. And I always tell people, before you go and spend money on expanding and trying to get into new markets, let's make sure that we own our own backyard, right? Let's make sure that all of the work you've done as a business, as a brand, maybe you've shaken hands and kissed babies in your local community, making sure you're leveraging that, right? So in your existing office location, how do you make sure that you have maxed it out? How do you know, okay, I've gotten as many calls in cases as I possibly can out of this market. I'm ready for the next market. And the idea is looking at it, researching it, making sure you're reaching as far as possible. So there are tools that help you do that. A lot of the companies out there will give you free reports that will show you how you're doing, or you can even go do these on your own with some of these tools like Local Viking, Local Falcon. But essentially, what you see is a map here of Greensboro, and in orange squares, you see some of the neighborhoods outside of it. Those are easily 15, 20 minutes, maybe longer away from downtown. And the question is, if you're in downtown Greensboro, are you reaching those are you reaching those neighborhoods? The way that Google is going to determine who is seen in that local three pack is who is the best nearest option, right? So if I sit in my home in Pleasant Garden and there is no law firm for injury, and I look up a car accident lawyer from my couch in Pleasant Garden, and there are no firms between me and downtown Greensboro, right? Just concept sake. There's just nobody out there. There's not any big firms near me in Pleasant Garden itself. Google has to still find me the three nearest best options, right? So it might go as far as downtown Greensboro to show me those three firms that are in downtown, just because there's no better option near me, right? So the way that you can see this, we do research and we're able to look at those cities. I look at the main downtown area and then I look at the cities around it. And you can see on the right-hand side here, all the way to the right, there's local ranking. This particular firm said, you know, I'm crushing it in Greensboro. There's nothing you can do for me with that particular office location to squeeze anything else out of it. Surely enough, if you're in Greensboro downtown, he's ranking number 2. You see that in purple, right? Number 2 in that three pack. Wonderful. He's got the good Greensboro population. But when I searched for injury terms in Pleasant Garden, Oak Ridge, McLeansville, Forest Oaks, Grandover, places a little bit outside the city, what I noticed was if you look in the column right to the left of the local ranking, you see cities that pull. It's telling me that if I sat in any of those cities and I searched for injury terms, it's 3 Greensboro firms that are showing in that local three pack, that there's nobody local in those cities worthy of showing in that three pack. And what you notice is he's ranking number 11, 7, 4, 9, 15, not in the three pack, while his neighbor that is right there in Greensboro actually is ranking, right? So what that tells me is if they can do it, he can do it, that there's an additional 20,000 population at least, and a lot more suburbs outside of his office location that he could be reaching, right? So this, Zach, is just kind of a manual pull. Our team will actually go and do incognito modes and we'll put the city we want to stand in and we search the term and then it'll give us the three pack and we are telling it, you know, it's 3 Greensboro firms. We'll have the information about the firms. And you'll probably see another screen with how that breaks down. But really, if you pull up a map, just a Google map, right, of Greensboro, and you were to put your pin, just click a dot on Pleasant Garden, it pops up the left-hand menu and you can search for a term, right? Or you can right click on that dot and it should say search near me or search nearby. If you click that, you can put in personal injury and what it will show you visually on that map is who would be the 3 that would show. It'd show you the three pack on the left and then it'll show you the red dots, right? And you can see the saturation of firms. So just literally opening up your city in Google Maps, poking around the different areas and searching the terms you care about, you can kind of see. And then that's your next step of saying, okay, well, man, everybody's saturated in the north, right? Looks like there's lots of opportunity here in the south, right? And just kind of competing and marketing to areas where there's not a lot of law firms. So at the end of the day, you might think, hey, yes, I am crushing it in my market, but there might be other opportunities. This is a visual one real quick to show you guys. These are those geogrids I was mentioning. And this is showing you visually. So on the left-hand side, you have one firm. On the right-hand side is another firm, 2 different firms. They are just a block or 2 away from each other in Spartanburg, South Carolina, right? What these balls with the numbers in it are telling us is if, well, first, your office is where the arrow's pointing. Your office is in the middle of this GeoGrid. The GeoGrid here is about a mile between each ball. So if you're here, we're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mile radius of your office. If I were to stand up here in my house and I searched for personal injury lawyer, you would see that you rank number 8. If I search from here, you rank number 9. If I search from here, you're number 7. That's what these balls are saying, right? Now, these offices are just a block apart from each other, as I mentioned. You'll notice that this one is not in the 3-pack at all for this personal injury lawyer term, but this firm is in the 3-pack through the whole 6 mile radius, right? This is to show if you get a GeoGrid like this, you can look at the competitors and see what is the opportunity, right? If this firm can do it, you can do it. What's the difference here? Your question you should be asking is, well, why does that firm look like that? And why does that firm look like that? What's the magic thing they're doing? On your Google business profile, there's all those fields that you can fill in to tell Google why you're the best person, right? Why you're the best firm, why you're a good fit for the consumer. And you can also add something called service areas. The service areas are these little names of cities and towns all around you. And that's one way to optimize and tell Google, yes, I would like to show in this corner. I would like to show in this neighborhood and that neighborhood. And if there are not a saturation of firms out here, then you have an opportunity. However, if there's 4 firms that are really good that are in this area, they're going to show over you, right? So these GeoGrids are really wonderful because they help us see what's the opportunity out there for you and what areas can you actually optimize for, right? If you're state specific, that is something to consider more on the content side of things, right? So building out Florida statewide or Massachusetts and Connecticut is what you're doing. There's 2 different things going on here. And this is to answer Rick's question, right? If you are to try to do that, if you were to search and you put in the state, Massachusetts, whatever practice area, right? Sometimes you'll notice that there is a local 3-pack and it is giving you the best 3 companies in the state of Massachusetts. If that exists, then that's opportunity. You absolutely want to be in it, right? Now, the way to do that is to make sure that your GeoGrid locally lights up green. It needs to be super powerful. It needs to be very well built out. It needs to be the best in its own little town first before it can rank statewide. So you can rank statewide. There are statewide 3-packs, right? If you want that. And then if there isn't a local 3-pack, and when you search things with the state name of Connecticut or Massachusetts and you see just websites show up, that's by having really strong content built out. And so you're building out 10, 12, however many more pages than the person who's showing number 1 right now, with that state name, with the information that's helpful to your consumers. So yes, so that is really important to think about if you're trying to be statewide or if you're trying to be nationwide or if you're trying to be local. But the way we have helped our clients go from local to ranking statewide is by first those baby steps of ranking in multiple cities throughout the state. So you would take your biggest towns in Connecticut and your biggest towns in Massachusetts. You would have maybe 2 or 3 local offices that are all strong and all rank. You're getting cases here, here, and here. And then once Google sees that you're doing well in 3 different cities, they start to consider you statewide and the best in multiple areas, right? And as we progress and we're talking about ChatGPT and AI learning these items, they're going to learn that much faster about you, right? They'll be able to collect that data. So hopefully that helps as well. For Rick's question. These are just a couple more quick ones to show you time frames. So depending on your market, if it's not very competitive and you do have, pretty decent basics, the website is strong, the backlinks are strong, then your local will rank faster, right? So the foundation is there. You'll see this is July, this is truck accident lawyer, they're here in the middle. And then you'll see September a couple months later. And then November, these little stars say that's the first time that they've shown up in that ranking. So basically from July to November, 5 months-ish, they went from this much visibility on the left to this in November. And the difference is the call volume, right? If you're not even being seen, people can't click the call button. When you are being seen all the time, consistently, the call volume difference is incredible, right? And then it's a numbers game. The more calls you get, the more cases signed it will happen. And this is an example of good to great. So you may be good and you may be popping in and out number 3 and 4, right? But if you've achieved this level in December here on the left side, you're not far away from being able to dominate it. And the difference here was really interesting because from December to February, by just tweaking a little bit in that Google Business Profile, we were able to increase this firm's call volume by 50 additional phone calls each month. And those are 30-second calls, first time callers. So just to give you an idea of this left to right, just from going number 4 to number 2 in a lot of the area around the office, that's how many calls, new calls were there, right? And again, if you are with a company that does really well with your organic and you're ranking on page 1 with your website pages, but you haven't moved the needle on the local, it's very low hanging fruit for you, right? Because when all those things come together, that's when you actually rank. So local is absolutely a thing that still works. Test out your existing office location. Here's a little bit more built out on like, now that our office is doing well, how do we continue to build our call volume? How do we continue to get more cases? Well, the answer is get another office location, right? And so if that office location can be just as much population as where you're currently dominating, then you're talking about doubling your call volume if you can replicate the same thing in another market, right? So how do you identify a new market? This is really important. I think a lot of people will say, well, you know what? I feel like this market is the place I need to go to. I need to go to this city. That's just where everybody is, and that's what makes sense. But again, I say bring it back to data. Numbers never lied to me. I love numbers. I think they're very important. But when you're looking here at the research, you can look at you versus the competition, right? So, and you're looking at certain KPIs. How many backlinks do you have? How many pages of content do you have? What's your overall trust score? How many reviews do you have? And then you look at those particular competitors in that new market you're thinking about. So you might have 5 cities that you're vetting. And then you're going to look at all the 3 people in each of those 5 cities that are ranking and look at their numbers versus your numbers. And you're going to quickly find, okay, my number's here in the orange. Man, I could really do some damage if I went into this city right here in particular, right? That's considered a low competition market because your numbers already are better than them. If you looked at this market, you're like, oh, I'm on the cusp. I would need to do some work to win there, right? I would need to come in and do some extra work to catch up to them. Medium competition market. And then, okay, this market, I would have to double all my numbers essentially. And so that's kind of a long way away, right? So you look at this, and if you're looking at those 3 cities, you would very easily say, well, if I went to the lower competition market, I'd probably rank quicker, wouldn't I, right? I'd rank quicker, I'd get phone calls quicker, but is it a large population? Is it a small population? Unclear, right? That's where you would have to look at the population to figure it out. But the idea is let's always kind of figure out what's my lowest hanging fruit, quickest opportunity to actually start getting those call volumes when I'm picking a new office location to go into, a new market to go into. And to see that in real numbers, I have this one where someone was like, yeah, Columbia is exactly where I'm going to go. That just makes sense for us. But if you look at the color competition here, right? Columbia is red because there's a lot of law firms there. And what you also see is that Columbia will only get you to reach in Columbia proper and then a handful of locations outside of it because there's so many firms in those suburbs outside, you're not going to reach into them, right? There's a saturation. So you're going to show to about 223,000 population. However, Greenville, if you're open to other markets in the same state, will show to a lot more cities outside because there's not as many law firms in that metro area. It's half the competition at yellow, which means it'll take half the time and half the resources to actually rank there in the 3-pack and to start getting call volume, right? And the population actually, when you add up all those areas outside of it, a little bit more. So again, we might want to go on feelings, but if we do some research, if we really look at this from a perspective of what's the work smart, not hard strategy, you're going to go with Greenville, right? And then once you've done that, if you really, want to be taking it from good to great again, you're going to look at the market of Greenville or whatever market it is that you have chosen. And then you can look at where is the competition, where are the trauma centers if you're PI, where's the jails if you're criminal, whatever it might be, where are people searching from? And you're going to find the exact area within that market that you should put that office location, right? And there is always rules. You don't just pop up an office space. You don't just use a PO box. That's not how life works. There are real rules. And so there are a couple of items that I put here. This deck is going to be shared with you so you can see our free guide that shows you the different check boxes you need to check to pass the Google smell test. But basically, it needs to be a real office space. It needs to have signage in the directory, need to have a key to the door. So if you're doing a shared office space like a Regis or a WeWorks, then we need to, and that's a new thing. You didn't used to be able to put it in a Regis or WeWorks at all. Now you can do those, but you need a key to a door. Can't be a shared office space where you don't have a real space yourself, right? But a lot of things are in there that you want to make sure actually pass the test. So local, super important. Make sure you are covering your backyard. Max it out. Don't go spend more money on trying to build new offices if you haven't even, figured out your main office, first of all, right? There's more juice to squeeze, and you can really spend smart by only spending on that one first. Then you break into the others when you're ready. And kind of exactly how you would do that. Local still wins, but what's new? What's on the horizon now, right? I know we also talked about maybe pay-per-click, and I want to just quickly say that PPC, pay-per-click, is still very hit or miss. It depends on your market, and with consolidation of law firms, with larger law firms out there, with lead gen law firms, the nature of the beast is that you've got a lot of folks that are just spending absurd amounts on pay-per-click, the traditional ads. And so it's really hard to set yourself apart in pay-per-click still. However, there's a new thing called PMAX, newer, but PMAX is a type of campaign where it is, sometimes ads, sometimes graphics, display ads, kind of a branding ad. They are a little bit lower dollar. If you do offline branding, it's really helpful to keep seeing that brand online. And those have been pretty successful. So asking your company about those could be helpful. And then local service ads are still crushing it. So local service ads are connected to your Google business profile. It's, again, remember, you're up at the top. It looks like the local 3-pack. Consumers trust it. You only pay once you actually have a phone call for 30 seconds. So it's pay per call, which is nice, but the reviews are going to matter there. So on paid side, still love LSAs. PPC is still tough. Got to have big money to play that game. And then PMAX is something to look into. As far as what's coming next, it's AI, right? AI, but lots of shiny objects. There's Gemini, there's ChatGPT. Even saw AI on your GBPs first. So Google Business Profile, you used to be able to tell your story. You would fill in the fields on the back end of your Google Business Profile. Google would take you at your word and say, okay, this is what they're good at. This is why we should show them. But this past year, since the beginning of the year, we started to see little elements be added to your Google Business Profile where people could post, not just as a review, but post photos. They could edit your Google Business Profile a little more freely. There are sections on the GBP where people can ask questions about your business, and Google will generate an answer. So it may be not true. It may not be the answer you want it to be, right? But AI is figuring out who you are based on what consumers are saying about you on forums, on your Google Business Profile, in your reviews, and they are controlling the narrative now. So what your job is to do is to try to control that narrative best you can. Keep an eye on when you see things change, right? Google Gemini has this, it'll do a summary of your reviews now. It has descriptions. It's starting to change those up. So you may write a description manually, but AI might replace it. And so just checking on those things, making sure, hey, is this right or not? And so there are ways for you to report your review, description errors, things like that. And you got to be vigilant, or else Google's just going to create a story for you, right? At this point, you want to make sure those answers are correct. So, um, in terms of seeing AI there, it's making sure that you're keeping on top of all the new things that exist. It's trying to control that narrative by having your consumers work within their new bounds. On the review side, that's still the one that you can help control the user-generated content, making sure that you're getting people to say the things you want about you, making sure you're getting reviews consistently. There are new ways like this. There's review survey questions now, right? That people can answer. You're driving them to the app and telling them, hey, in Google Maps, do you mind answering these things? There's like emojis you can use now. No ranking factor has been put out. We're still testing items, but if there's an opportunity to do something different, have your folks do it. With that being said, I know that reviews are tough for everybody and they're really important because once you're in the three pack, you need a certain number to look good next to the other two people in order to get the phone call. And people get wild with it. We start doing crazy things and we incentivize folks and we get fake ones and we're buying them from Russia. And Google has been cutting down on that. So try to be smart with what you're doing. Also, if your neighbor is doing bad things, there's a way to actually report them. So that's a piece. And with our last couple of minutes here, I'm gonna talk a little bit about ChatGPT, which I think has been on a lot of people's minds. I usually like to ask when we're in person, how many of you have heard from your intake that someone heard about you through ChatGPT? So I'd be interested if people raise their hand or, mentioned here, but we've been seeing, oh, there we go. We got a couple. There we go. I've heard it. And so it's happening. So very quickly overview, I liken this to Google 20 years ago. Rick S says not. Um, but 20 years ago, Google was like, man, I gotta pick people and put them up here as the best options, right? So any basic little thing you did, if you had a website, okay, I can rank you, right? And then they were like, okay, whoever has the most backlinks. And so people were buying thousands of backlinks and it was just a numbers game. And then Google was like, okay, now everybody has thousands of backlinks. How do I figure out who's actually the real good for, right? And so then they started to say, okay, well, we have these like scores for backlinks and some are worth more than others. Right now, I think where we are with ChatGPT is out of 10, I think they're at level 3 sophistication. A couple weeks ago, they were just throwing spaghetti at the wall. They're like, hey, this firm has mentioned they're in this city. They've done this little piece, so I'm going to put them here in the results. Now more firms are starting to do things that are ChatGPT is looking for. And I'm seeing that even just 3 days ago, ChatGPT has a new look and feel when you search for best lawyer in a certain city. So the things that essentially are what they're looking for. Results, your verdicts and your settlements. There's very few firms in this country that can actually say has recovered over $1 billion for their clients or 10 billion. So doing that right away has gotten them a place on ChatGPT. But if you can consistently say that you get results, that you try cases, that's a big piece of this. Awards and recognitions, pay to play. Get your super lawyers, get your best law firm award. Any of those things are being picked up. Testimonials on your Google business profile are important. We're seeing in the last iteration of ChatGPT, but we're also seeing them pull stuff from Yelp. So maybe go and dusting that off a little bit and, updating the description and getting another review there or so, keep it a little bit active might help. Lawyer profiles and citations have been the source, the response, like in the actual results page of ChatGPT. The Avo profile is one in particular that we've been seeing. Having that just be updated is really important. And then popular user-generated content forums. In step 1 of ChatGPT, we saw a ton of sources from Reddit. Lately, though, we have been able to see that they're not pulling from the forums as much as they're pulling from your website. So they've started to get more sophisticated just in the last couple of weeks. And then press and authority, always great. So best of community awards, being in any kind of press locally. These are just examples of what you can see. An example of me looking up best medical malpractice lawyer in Long Island. You'll see that it was giving names of a few firms, where they're located, and then it was their website that it was pulling, right? Then later we saw it kind of look like this, where it was a law firm list still, what they do well, notable features, lovely, wonderful. And you could see here that the results are Avo. right? So those are Avo profiles. Then you do the best search, best personal injury lawyer on blah, blah, blah. You can see that sometimes they're picking up bestlawfirm.com, right? That's one of those pay to play awards. Just having that or having a page on your website that mentions this particular award is also, if you'd clicked into these top three here, it was their award page, right? So you can't ethically say we're the best law firm or we're the best lawyer for personal injury on any website. The workaround is get the best law firm badge, win the award, make a press page that says, our firm has won the best law firm in Nashville, blah, blah, blah. It's your title tag. It's an exact match. It's legal because it's something you had. So here's an example now of what it looks like though. 2 days ago, I did best personal injury lawyer or best injury law firm in Plainfield, New Jersey. It features the whole firm. It's one firm. There's not a list anymore, right? So that's kind of crazy. And then the first two bullet points you see there are its location and then its review ratings and number of reviews. So it's pulling from your Google business profile from ChatGPT, right? That's really important to note that that's the way that it's moving. This is a long question. What law firm should I use for a car accident case? And I put a city name. You'll notice here it picked one firm and then it gave you links to their car accident page. So if you've built silos and content properly, that still matters. ChatGPT is now able to go within a website and see the exact page you should use. And this is just one more example to show you that super lawyers are the place, right? And here you can get, it's the consumer mindset. Instead of saying best law firm anymore, since you're only seeing one instead of a list, now people might say, I want the top three, and it'll give you the top three, right? Um, Avo, this is just what the profile I've noticed. You got to have a 5.0, have some reviews, a 10 rating. We have a way to get the 10 rating. It's just getting a couple of reviews, adding a description. It's just doing the work. Doesn't take very long. But I've also noticed that maybe having the pro paid version is something that's helping you be seen. This is an example of an awards page that you want on your site, right? This is what was an example of an answer on ChatGPT. And then this, my favorite, press source. This is just a pay to play, EIN Pressfire. You can talk about yourself however you want, make yourself the best person for a search result in Los Angeles. There are tons and tons and tons of law firms who have very high verdicts that could easily be the people that ChatGPT shows. But this woman who has a wonderful resume, is parts of different organizations, all the things, she did this press release and that's what was picked up. And so when you look up Los Angeles best personal injury lawyer, top personal injury lawyer is one of the titles here, she was able to show. So it's important. The last piece, if you're going to search ChatGPT, how many of you actually then take that answer and go check it in Google? Usually there's a lot of people that raise their hand for that, right? So Gemini is the version of ChatGPT for Google. It's still very relevant. It looks different if you do best personal injury in Google. However, it is still the same fundamentals. You'll notice here that it is because of the 1 billion one. The second person chosen is because of 2 billion one. And when they do a list, it's the same kind of things. It's rewards, it's results, it's reviews, it's being a part of organizations. So all of those concepts that I mentioned earlier are going to be what still feed into whether it's Gemini, ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity. There's a bunch of them out there, right? Lots of different things going on. So this is just my cell phone. If you have questions, like I said, about different tools to use, marketing, whatever, I'm totally open to answer questions. I was answering most of the questions, Maddie, as we went through
Did you
in
answer
real
the
time.
question about advertising on Atlas? Is that a thing?
Yes. So sorry, I did not get to that one, Joseph. So Atlas just came out. My understanding is that you're not able to, we have not played with advertising on ChatGPT at all. I don't necessarily know about that, but Atlas is going to be a browser, so I imagine it will come at some point.
Yeah.
But that's brand new, Atlas, so we haven't
They're
played
gonna
with
tell me something new, but yeah, I'm expecting that as well. So enjoy it while it's free and
it.
leverage, all of your levers as you can.
Yes,
Free.
yes, yes, absolutely. Yeah, so other questions that people have, I'm happy to answer. Maddie, I don't know if you had any questions, but I think biggest thing, track, know what buckets have worked and still work. Keep in mind that you should invest in the buckets that have always worked, where you have a head start that are going to matter for the future. It's
Yeah.
big.
I think, sometimes when we go through presentations like this, it can seem like it's overwhelming. But if you take the standards down a notch and just realize that a press release or a new web page on your website don't have to be like ready for the, first page New York Times, um, just get them up. It's more important to act and get a B plus than to delay the act and get that A plus, because that A plus is just never going to come because it's at the bottom of your to-do list, right? And that's obviously why agencies like BluShark Digital exist. But if you are starting to, try this out on your own, you're not sure yet if you want an agency and you want to figure other things out like intake, a Smith AI first, you can start to produce some of the content and realize, like, one, how much work it may be for you, or two, what the impact is when you start to go about it on your own. How much effort is it going to take to add a couple new pages to your website? And if you can just get started with the basics of sharing your reviews and accolades and awards on a single page, it doesn't have to be as pretty as the page that Nalini showed. But one of the underlying things is that, the prettiness of a page typically has really good structure behind the metadata. So that's one thing to consider. But just getting it up there is the most important thing. Chat GPT will be able to read it even if it's not the prettiest page, right? Google will be able to read it. So just get started. Don't feel like you have to boil the ocean. If you take just a few of these tips that Nalini shared today and you implement them, you will find that this plus an intake solution are really what you need to grow your business, right? And then you can iterate from there. But that's the most important thing. Are you generating, an increasing volume of leads? And that may not be to handle an increasing volume of leads. It may be to be more picky with the leads that you do choose to work with. And then are you being responsive to them so your time and effort are not wasted?
No, absolutely. And I think that's a big part of the tracking. If you're trying to do that in-house yourself, and we have a lot of folks who start off with us and they get the leads and they're like, oh, my intake can handle it. But when we start to show like leads to how many were wanted and not signed, it's absolutely the trigger to say, okay, I need to look at outsourcing my intake, right? I need people after hours. I have a GBP that says I'm 24 hours, but I'm not answering that. Oh, I can't do Spanish. I don't have any Spanish people in house, but I wanted the translator on my website, right? And it's like, well, then you need to search for companies and opportunities like Smith AI. They can help you with that piece for sure. There's a lot of after hours phone calls that we see unfortunately go miss. So it's
Yeah.
nice to have that data though for us to say, hey, look, here's why you should look at somebody. Um,
Yes.
yeah,
A couple questions. So one, yes, the webinar will be available to every registrant. And yes, there's a lot of info to go back to. You'll
right.
also get Nalini's deck. So we will link that to you. You'll get the links by the end of the week, so tomorrow. Um, and a couple other questions. So should we be doing these steps pay to play, press releases on a firm basis or lawyer basis if the firm has 5 to 15 lawyers? Personal versus firm. Nalini, what's your thought there?
Yes. So, yes, if you're playing a bigger game, if you're in a bigger market and you have it in the budget, buy lawyer. Get me all those super lawyer awards, get me all those Avo profiles because it's more bites at the apple and they see it as an aggregate. They're like, oh, this firm is larger and it has this many profiles. So, absolutely try to do them for every single one. Something that I will say that I really love about BluShark is that one of the things that I get to do is every quarter, we'll take like 10 to 30 new strategies that we test as case studies with our clients. And so we are looking so nitpicky at even like Avo. Is it that it's 3 FAQs a month that matter or 5 FAQs that matter, right? So we're testing that with one profile right now, but once that rolls out, then we say, okay, we're going to apply this to everything if it's successful, right? So right now there's no exact answer for some of these things, but having them is the first step that you should be doing for all of your lawyers for sure.
Great. And then Joe, regarding your question, yes, you do have to be logged in to ChatGPT, for example, to pose those questions, right? It may impact the search results that appear, but because of your clientele, typically they're not engaging with lawyers on a routine basis. Most of your clients are going to be the first time they've ever hired an attorney, right? Except for business clients and some of the routine things. Um, there's not a lot of prior history that's going to instruct what their search results are. I don't think it's that influential that they're personally logged in, other than just giving them, a higher location match. Other preferences they may have are probably irrelevant to the legal situation that they find themselves in. If it's personal injury, criminal defense, things like that, maybe their lifestyle could affect a family law recommendation, but I think that the preponderance of data probably trumps the small personal inclinations that could affect the search result. And overall, it's not going to be a major factor.
The one thing I will say though is sometimes if you do search yourself all the time because you're the law firm owner, that could affect things a little bit. And so people do see when they
Yeah.
search ChatGPT, they see theirs. And so
Too much false
um,
positive, right?
yes, it's the same thing as local, like that's an issue. But the thing with Atlas that I'm understanding, and again, brand new, so just looking into it, but Atlas itself will have opportunities where you can say, what were the last 5 Italian restaurants I searched like last week or whatever? You can ask it as a database of your own information. So I don't know, it will have that information if you ask for it. I wonder though if that will play a part in how they're formulating answers for you because it's a good user journey. And Gemini for sure has you can click something that will actually remember your old searches. So if you search that again later, which I thought was cool for law firms, if like 3 law firms showed up and you said, save this, and then you looked again for car accident lawyers in a week, it would show you that old search. So that means you're showing for longer evergreen. Um, if you were ranking last week and not now. But that they have to opt into it. They have to click it for that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we'll see how many of those remain opt-ins or that
Yeah,
choice is
exactly.
for them
Yep.
over time. As you know, like all these things on Google constantly change. Chase asked, does this type of marketing work for business litigation type law firms?
Yeah,
Nalini?
so it depends on the practice within it, right? B2C is going to work more often than B2B. But if you are, for example, working with just artists, right, or just tech companies, or certain people of a younger generation that will go to Google to look for it, then yes, certain things can work. LLC formations, sometimes small businesses are going to Google for that. You have to think about the type of client and the practice area within business litigation. It's not going to work for all of your things. But for some of them, you could piecemeal it and just focus on those items to become volume. Yes.
Great. Wonderful. Well, thank you, everyone. It was great having you here, and I will send out the recording and slides to you in the next 24 hours. And feel free again to get in touch with Nalini. You can always reach Smith AI, Smith.ai, Maddie at Smith.ai. So feel free to get in touch with me as well. We'd be happy to chat with you about solutions that we can help with on the receptionist side, intake side. But we're longtime fans of BluShark, so we would highly recommend that you get in touch with Nalini if these solutions seem like a good fit for your business.
Thank you. And I realized I didn't put my email address on this because my email is a shit show, guys. But in theory, if you guys do send a text to this QR code, I can do that. And then Maddie, if you could share my email address after, that would be great too,
Yep,
just so
I'll
they have
include it
it.
in the
Yep.
email. All right, everyone, thanks so much. Have a great day. See you next
Thanks
time.
so much. All
Bye.
right, bye guys.